Hi, everyone. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Anna.
And you're listening to We Judge a Show by Its Pilot, a podcast where we do exactly what the title says. On today's episode, we're judging the pilot of one of the top shows of all time. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our pod.
Hi, everyone.
All right, so today we are doing it's Friends and Family. We're still in Friends and Family month. We realized we're going really heavy on the family, and we need more friends.
Yeah, more.
So we are doing a top show, one of the most popular shows of all time, and I think that this show definitely qualifies for that. I think even if you haven't seen this show, you've heard of it, you know of it, and that is Three's Company.
Come and knock on my door.
Can't sing too much of that.
I know, I can't sing.
Yeah. So it's really funny that, Sarah, if you're listening, my sister and I had a really long-running inside joke. So on an episode of Full House, I don't remember what the reasoning was. They were talking about like recognizable theme songs, and they talk about Three's Company. And John Stamos, Uncle Jesse, he's like, "Oh yeah, of course, everyone knows that song." And so he sings the first two verses or the first two sentences. And then he realizes he doesn't know the rest of and so he's like, and the thing, and the guy falls off the bike, and me and my sister used to say that all the time.
Aww.
So, Sarah, I finally watched Three's Company.
She finally did.
I now get it because it's in the opening credits. He sees he's riding his bike on Venice Beach, sees a girl, he falls in the sand.
I know.
So wacky.
So wackadoodle, that Jack Tripper.
All right, so Three's Company, the episode was called A Man About the House, and Anna is going to give us the episode and series information. So Anna, let us have it.
All right, Three's Company, A Man About the House. So the pilot premiered on ABC on March 15th, 1977. March 15th, beware the Ides of March. The series ran from 1977 to 1984 for 8 seasons with a total of 172 episodes. That's all. Wow.
Yeah, eight seasons.
That was a lot. So the series was actually based off a UK show called A Man About the House.
Yep.
And the American series was developed by Don Nickel, Michael Ross, and Bernie West, and they also wrote the co-pilot. It was directed by Bill Hoban, who directed other shows such as Maude, Welcome Back, Kotter, and Alice. Oh, I love all of those.
Those are all good shows.
And the series follows 3 singles, florist Janet, receptionist Chrissy, and culinary student Jack living platonically in a Santa Monica apartment.
That's how it was written in Wikipedia. I couldn't resist. I was like, living together platonically. I'm just like, oh, I got to put that. That's so funny.
Three's Company spawned 2 spin-offs, The Ropers and Three's a Crowd, which also had original British counterparts. And you can currently find the episodes on Pluto TV.
So a little fun fact. So in Three's Company, John Ritter's character's name is Jack Tripper. In the British show, it was Robin Tripper. And the Three is a Crowd spinoff that was the British equivalent was called Robin's Nest.
Aww.
It was a really kind of a cool, and then the Ropers, the landlords in the British version also got their own spinoff. So
gotcha.
Yeah, it all kind of paralleled.
It's all circle.
Why do we pick this for a top show? This is probably the easiest one we're gonna have to explain so far. Usually we're kind of like, well, it was the most watched streaming series. It won awards. This one's super simple. It was the number 1 scripted show of the 1979-1980 season. It was technically number 2 overall after 60 Minutes, which is 60 Minutes still going?
I don't know, to be honest.
Yeah.
I mean, I think it might be.
I think,
I
think, is it a CBS? Is 60 Minutes a CBS?
CBS on Sunday nights usually, and
yeah.
I do want to think it does because it always gets
Big
trumped.
Brother.
That and NFL football on
right.
CBS sometimes delays it. Sometimes you'll see like people on the West Coast or East Coast or whatever the time delay. So I think it's still around.
Oh, okay. Yeah. And it remained in the top 10 throughout the entire series. Like, so it remained one of the most popular shows on TV. And I mean, like most seasons, it was in the top 3 or 5.
Wow.
So, I mean, it was always, people were knocking on the door.
People were knocking on that door. They wanted to go hang out.
This aired, you would almost 8 years old. I had to do the math real quick.
Do your math.
You were almost 8 years old. Did you watch the show when it originally aired?
Oh, yeah.
Was it a big? Well, I know. I always want to ask you, was it a big event? But I know that you were pretty much always watching stuff by yourself because different.
Yeah, my brother
ages
was off in
were,
college by this point.
Your sister was in high school.
My sister was in high school. In fact, my brother, he can correct me if I'm wrong. I think that he had just left for the Army in March of 77.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, we watched it. Again, I mean, I don't remember things being a big event back then when you only had 4 channels to watch from.
Right.
You sort of just picked of the 3 main networks, like, okay, which one is of the most interest to me tonight?
Right.
So that was kind of how it was. So, yes, we watched Three's Company.
Awesome.
In our house.
So was it like one of your favorites? Was it one that you watched a lot, or was it just a show that was on?
Yes, I will say I watched it to see what would happen. I think again, as young little Anna, was like being idealistic and going, oh, that's what it's going to be like when I have an apartment. I mean, I was joking a little while ago when we were talking about the episodes and just the order we were going to do them. I was just thinking to myself, I said, oh my gosh, I just remember their door. I thought their door was cool because it was like rounded at the top. And I thought that was fancy.
That whole apartment's pretty cool.
And I also loved their sort of sunken living room.
That's what I was literally thinking that. I was like, I liked how it like leveled down to the living room. Yeah.
I mean,
Very 70s.
It's kind of funny how, looking back, what someone who is 7 or 8 years old thinks is fancy. I mean, I don't think someone who is 7 or 8 today would think just a one-step sunken living room was fancy. But I did. I mean, again, I think things were a lot simpler in the mid 70s. Well, I mean, that's what I thought. I think I always just wanted to see what these crazy, people were going to do this week at their apartment or in their life.
Did you have a favorite character? Were you a Jack? Were you a Jack girl?
I was a Jack Tripper.
Yeah.
I just thought he was funny. Right. I thought he was funny, and my dad was a cook, so I could appreciate that he was in culinary school, and I thought that was cool. I mean, I think we even talked about that as we were watching the show. It was kind of funny that you said that it was sort of a non-traditional job, and I mean, of course, we have stereotypes of who should have what kind of jobs. I mean, it's a problem we have today and probably back then. But for me watching it, I didn't think that was non-traditional. In fact, I didn't know what that was. But I mean, my dad was a cook, so that was pretty normal to me.
Well, it was just the whole idea that like the girls are really bad cooks, but the guy's a good cook. Like, it was one of those things. It's like, that's the opposite of how things are. Like it was kind of that, like it was kind of that whole thing. Yeah. So yeah, Jack was probably my favorite just because I love John Ritter. Like just 5 seconds into him being on screen, he was just already doing like the physical comedy, like getting out of the bathtub, and
then you have a devotion to him from It.
Oh yeah. So he was in the original mini. So once again, I'm a huge horror movie fan, and It, Stephen King, it's probably like my favorite. All versions of it are like one of my favorite movies, and yeah, he was my favorite character too. Also, because Ben's my favorite character. So,
gotcha.
Yeah, and also John Ritter's just awesome. He was in.
He was awesome.
Yeah, he was in the Problem Child movies. I watched a lot of those.
And
watched those when I was a kid.
The 10 rules or 8 rules.
8 simple rules.
Yeah.
Yep. All right. So there were 2. So in the 8 seasons, there were Jack and Janet were kind of there the whole time.
Yes.
So about halfway through, they got a new landlord, and then they split. They had the third roommate kind of was split between Suzanne Summers for the first half and then Priscilla Barnes for the second half. Yes. Were their characters related?
I don't think
they weren't.
They were. Okay. I think there was a Cindy Snow, but I don't think that was.
I think
her.
She came in for like a season or like a second half of a season or something like that.
Yes.
So were you more Suzanne Summers or were you more Priscilla Barnes? You don't have to. It's not like one's better than the other, but like which one were you more familiar with from the show?
I'm going to go ahead and say Suzanne Summers.
Okay.
Only because I felt bad for Priscilla Barnes. I think she was I don't remember the whole reason why Suzanne Summers left. I think there might have been a money dispute or whatever happens in TV shows and whatnot. Because Suzanne, I think, to me, was really also the big breakout star. I mean, everyone loved her. I think Priscilla Barnes came on and just tried to be her instead of trying to instead of trying to develop her own identity on the show. I think she was in her mind, or the directors or producers or whoever were like, okay, you've got to be Suzanne Summers and be the new Chrissy Snow. And I just don't think she ever, to me, really clicked. I kind of felt that, but I'm nothing against Priscilla Barnes. I mean, I'm sure she is a super nice person and stuff, but on the show, I just kind of felt like she didn't really click with Jack and Janet.
Gotcha. The pilot opens with Janet and Chrissy had just had a big party in their apartment, and they're kind of waking up. Chrissy's cleaning and Janet's hungover. That kind of made me think, like, of course, I in the Friends episode I talked about, and I think I've talked about in another episode, the apartment that I used to live in.
Oh yeah.
Where I was roommates with my best friend. Our other best friend lived above us, and then we had two other friends that lived in the apartment next to us, and then one of our other friends used to come over and hang out all the time. So we used to have, and then I also lived right down the street from where I worked at, and we were all like in our 20s and had nothing else to do. So yeah, I had some pretty, I don't want to say crazy, but I had some pretty big parties.
Oh yeah, we were still having parties when we met.
Right,
so.
in my old apartment. But I wouldn't call any of them crazy. Did you ever have anything like that, like living in an apartment, like having like a out of hand, like crazy party? Because I think that was what we were supposed to led to believe
had happened.
Like,
I mean,
this,
they
like,
wake
huge
up
rager.
And Jack is in the bathtub,
Right.
passed out, even with the shower running, and he still hasn't woken up yet.
Right.
So I mean,
it was that punch.
It was that kind of punch party.
Yeah.
So yes, when I was in college, I had moved out of the dorm and moved into a townhouse with my sorority sister Pam, and we lived on a street called Jennifer Lane, and we had plenty of parties. We had punch, we did keg stands, we would cook out, and kind of like your apartment, we were kind of an apartment where people would always come over.
Yeah.
And so it was a fun time. I don't think we ever had anyone that passed out and ended up in our bathtub or anything, but we were definitely a hub of parties.
Yeah.
Kind of that early post college grad, like we were still kicking it at 22, 23 and living the life still with, we were working, but didn't have too many real responsibilities yet.
Right.
You were,
Same.
Yeah. So, yeah. So we had some pretty fun parties on Jennifer Lane. Shout out to Pam, all the people that came to any of our parties. We had a blast always.
So there was the whole joke with the spike punch that it turned their ladle green, which I guess was
gross.
That was really gross. And that just kind of made me think, like, of course, high school, college, that was all about like jungle juice. It's what it's called. We always called it a party punch. I don't know why I said that so weird. But I had never, I really never heard the term jungle juice until I was like college age. Did you ever have like a bad spiked punch story?
Yes.
I know because you grew up in New Orleans, you have party stories.
Yes, but not when you think. So yes, in college, absolutely. Just about every frat party had jungle juice in a large garbage can, and you look back and you're like,
Germs.
what was I thinking
Bacteria.
drinking this stuff? But so one of the worst parties, and anyone from my law school class, if you are listening, you can comment below if you remember this. So in the fall of 1996, when I went to law school, and this actually defied everything my dad had ever taught me about drinking.
Okay.
And so mind you, I've mentioned, that my parents were pretty chill about drinking, but their rule was always, we would rather you drink something that you have to open yourself, like a beer or something out of a bottle or a can. that you see being opened by someone, not someone handing you a drink, especially from someone you don't know. So this party defied like every rule that it was like a big tub of alcohol.
I've
I
been
think
to
this
those,
was a
yeah.
party. It was for my law school, so like all the law school classes were there, and it was at Pat O'Brien's in the French Quarter in like their party venue that they had, and it was for Halloween. And so I will also go on record as saying I did not have a car until I was a third year in law school. So this is how cool mom my mom was. So I'm like around 26 at the time. So my mom actually brings me to the party because she did not, like I had no real other way of going. So yes, my mom was driving me to law school parties.
Oh,
and
so
she,
cute.
I know,
That's so cute.
but I mean, my
I
mom
can
was
see
like,
it.
I'd rather just drive you than you like take
can
the
see
bus
it.
or, and I
Yeah.
lived on the West Bank and a lot of my law school classmates lived uptown. So
Right.
coming to get me was just not an option. So that being said, my mom was like, okay, well, whenever you're done, I'm going to go to the casino, as my mom would call it, at the old casino that used to be attached to the Hilton Hotel in New Orleans.
Okay.
I don't remember what it was called. I want to make it up and say it was like the Flamingo or something, but
Okay.
that's not right. I don't remember what it was called.
Okay.
But it was a riverboat that would go out on the river.
Now I know what you're talking about.
Okay, so I go to said party and I am following my dad's rule and I am not drinking. I am
Yes.
like, I'm not going to drink. I'm just here to have fun because I have to walk from Pat O'Brien's to the Hilton Hotel to get a ride home with my mom again.
Yeah.
She's out gambling and waiting for me. And I told her I would probably be done around midnight or 1:00. And she was, of course, like,
Right.
I'm sure I'll find money to gamble. So we're there and a classmate of mine comes up and he's like, oh, you're such a dud. You're not even drinking and blah, blah, blah. So peer pressure.
Oh, goodness.
I decide to have a cup of punch.
Oh, goodness.
I am not even kidding when I say I had 1 cup of punch.
Yep.
It was 1.
Yep.
And about 30 minutes later, I really started feeling sick. Like I was just like, something is wrong with me. I go into the bathroom and there are like girls passed out. And the most vivid memory I have, and this is Halloween, and I wasn't dressed up actually. I was like in just street clothes. There was a classmate, I don't know who it was. If she's listening, she'll know. She was dressed up as Raggedy Ann, and she was literally splayed out on the floor looking like a rag doll. Like she was like, legs open, like body hunched over, like passed out. I'm in the bathroom and I'm just like, oh my God, something's wrong. Like something is wrong.
Yeah.
People are just sick in the bathroom and I'm just like, this is not good. So I decide to just leave and go back to the Hilton because I'm like, I've just got to get home. Or at least back to my mom. So I go back to the Hilton and the casino is out. So like the casinos used to have to go out and undock because that was the law at the time. There were
Right.
no land-based casinos in New Orleans at the time.
Gotcha.
And so I'm sitting there waiting for the boat, the river boat to come back. And a security guard at the Hilton comes up and he's like, ma'am, you can't sleep here. Ma'am, like you got to go.
Right.
And this is not
Yeah.
good. And I'm drunk and he can see that I'm drunk. And I'm like, but I'm waiting for the casino boat. I'm waiting for my mom. And so he's like, no, you got to go. So I go and hide in a bathroom and I'm like in my mind hoping that I don't pass out
Right.
because I'm like, my mom's going to wonder where I am. Finally, I can hear the casino boat come back. I go and find my mom. Fast forward to the next day. It is All Saints Day. I went to a Catholic law school, so we had the day off. Knowing that my mom had scheduled a dental appointment for me. Yes, my mom was scheduling dental appointments for me at 26. But hey, Dr. Leeson, you know him. And so the next day we go to the dentist and I am really sick. It's not good. And this is still off of that 1 cup of punch. And
Was it at the same office that we go to?
yes, it was
Nice.
the same place. And so
I have a visual.
yes, so we go and I am in that little teeny tiny bathroom throwing up. And he actually takes pity on me. He's like, "Are you like
that little itty bitty bathroom?"
Yes. He's like,
Wow.
"Are you all right?" And I'm like, "No, something's bad." And my mom's like, telling him she got wasted last night. She was drunk. She went to a law school party, and she is terrible. And I was like, "Mom, no, really." I'm like, something was in the punch. I only had one cup. She goes, "How big was that one cup?" You know, I mean,
Right.
she was like ragging me, but I mean,
Well,
she wasn't
yeah.
mad, but she was mad that I had not followed my dad's rule.
Right.
So that night, actually, one of my other law school friends named Anne came over. We were going to go to some party again. And she was like, "Miss Gara, Anna only had one drink. I promise, like she had that one drink, got sick and left." We got to class on Monday. We found out like dozens of people ended up in the ER.
Oh my
God.
God.
Yeah. So something was in that punch. Either someone put something in it. It was bad alcohol. And after Anne told my mom that I had only had one cup, she did feel sorry for me. But that is my law school bad punch.
Wow.
And so I really, really try not to ever drink punch from a garbage can, a tub,
Yeah.
anything that I don't know what was put in
Right.
it myself. I mean, we have punch here at our parties. I mean, you know, I know that you make it, of course. It's not in a bathtub or the sink or something.
They do get
but
it does get some people wasted though.
yes, it does get people wasted, but not like ending up in the hospital.
No.
But yeah, so that was probably the worst. I mean, even in all of the frat parties I ever went to, I never felt like I needed to go to the hospital. I mean,
Yeah.
of course, I probably got a little tipsy, a little tore up, but not as sick as I was on that one cup of punch at my
Wow.
very first law school party.
That sucks.
Yeah. And I can honestly say that I really do not think I ever drank at a law school party again. I don't. I think I truly regretted that night and was like, yeah, that's it. I'm never going to have a drink at a party, at least at a law school party.
Yeah,
So,
well, neither one of us are big drinkers, so yeah, that's I'm already a lightweight, so I'm sure.
So what about you? Have you ever had a bad jungle juice spiked?
I have a similar story to that. So when I lived in Florida, when I first moved to Florida, at the restaurant that I worked at, there were two different bars that we would hang out at after work. One of which, one of my coworkers would like DJ there at night.
Okay.
And we were having I think we were having like a going away party for like one of the servers that was like moving, and there was a party punch jungle juice type thing being served. It was in like a dispensable little pitcher thing.
Okay.
And it had like the big orange slices on top of it. Like I remember that, like, and they were like, I remember everyone telling me like, "Oh, it's really strong," and just being like, "Oh, okay." And I don't remember how many I had. I was also like drinking at the bar. I mean, this was like, I was 21. So like, this was like, I could drink now legally. So I'm, just already drinking. But I don't know what it was, but everyone who drank the punch essentially like blacked out.
Wow.
That night. So maybe they just put an extra bottle of Everclear in there. Maybe, I don't know.
I always wondered if it was like it was like a combination of mixing.
Because the liquor that a lot of times they put in there are like 100 proof. It's like pure alcohol. And it's like moonshine, essentially. It's like diesel. It's like gasoline, essentially.
Great.
I mean, not literally, but that's what Everclear is. I mean, it's pure grain alcohol, and it's like, I feel like if you take a shot of that, there's a good chance that 100% that one of us is going to throw up if we each took a shot of that, especially like at room temperature or something like that.
And then throw in like a couple bottles of vodka, rum.
Right, because I remember being in
whatever
high
else was
school.
in it.
I remember being in high school and taking a shot. I know we're leading into it now. We're talking about drinking, but oh well. So when I was in high school, I remember taking warm shots of Wild Turkey, and that and I had maybe like 2 or 3 shots, but like that made me sick. So it's just, I think it's just the type of liquor. mixed in with like the sugar and the fruit punch. I don't know, but yeah. So it was pretty much like everyone blacked out that night that drank the punch.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So we both had a little bad punch story.
So I think the next time I drank something that was a spiked punch was the punch that I make.
Well, yeah. And it's
or if I'm like
strong
at a bar or something like that, that's
because,
fine. But yeah.
Again, I don't drink too much, but when I do drink your punch, I get a little tipsy.
Yes.
Like at my B-Day party.
But yes,
we're all making fun of me.
House parties and stuff like that, I make my own drinks.
Yes.
I make sure to make my own drinks, and when I'm at a bar, usually I'm watching the bartender, make the drinks.
Definitely.
All right, let's talk about this plot. Let's talk about the summary to the pilot.
All
right. So we kind of talked about it a little bit, but we open to it's the morning after, big old party. Roommates Janet and Chrissy. Janet's hungover. Chrissy's trying to pick up because they're interviewing for new roommates. They just had a big going away party for their roommate Eleanor, who is getting married and had a baby. I guess they were talking about that at the beginning.
Yeah.
The house is completely trashed. So they kind of are starting to clean up. I think Janet's like, I'm going to go take a shower. Go into the shower, and there's a man in there. It's John Ritter. It's Jack Tripper. They eventually wake him up. Like you said earlier, they turn on the shower, and he still doesn't wake up. He finally gets up, says his name is Jack, and that basically he tagged along with a group of guys that crashed the party. So he didn't know anybody.
Yeah.
He just showed up and drank the punch that turned the ladle green. And woke up in the bathtub. So Jack kind of like immediately kind of makes himself at home because he got all wet from the shower. He's waiting for his clothes to dry. He's wearing Chrissy's robe or one of their robes, and he kind of shows his worth immediately by cooking for them. He reveals that he's a culinary student and that he's been living at the YMCA. I think he maybe had just moved to LA or was trying to like find an apartment, and they're looking for a roommate. So they kind of decide, hey, let's just offer it to Jack, and Jack, of course, accepts. By the way, this is a very straightforward pilot, so this is not going to be a very long synopsis at all. It's like 2 paragraphs. I'm not even kidding.
Because really, they just show them that opening scene, and all of that just transpired, and then they go down, cut.
It's between the apartment and downstairs to the Ropers, back up to the apartment, downstairs to the Ropers, and then the final scene is back up at the apartment.
Yeah.
It's very straightforward. All right, so Mr. Roper, he's the landlord. He lives downstairs. He's kind of really mad because they had a rager. Helen, his wife, is kind of giving him crap, like you're only mad because they didn't invite you, and kind of like giving him a hard time. And I love her; she's so funny. And so I think at first she's like, hey, I'll go up there and talk to them, because letting them know, like, hey, you can't have parties like that. You can't throw ragers like that. And Helen's like, I'll go up there and talk to them about it. So she goes up there. She sees Jack up there. So she goes back downstairs, tells her husband, like, oh, I saw a guy up there. And so immediately, like, he comes back upstairs, and there's this whole conflict of they introduce him as their new roommate, and
but it was actually the one lady that they were.
I skipped it upstairs. I skipped it upstairs. So they're interviewing roommates. So yeah, they haven't offered it to Jack yet, and they're interviewing roommates because that was already scheduled to happen.
Yes.
God, I completely skipped over that. I can't believe I did that.
I know.
Thank you, Boo.
Okay, you're welcome, Boo.
And so yeah, so they're interviewing this one woman. I guess she's supposed to be like Buffy, Muffy,
really
like
uptight,
really the oh, hello everyone, like
hello, yes,
kind of that.
I'm very pretentious.
That fake British accent that Americans have, kind of thing. And so Mr. Roper goes upstairs and I guess is convinced that this woman that they're interviewing is dressed up like a woman. I don't really...
Or because I think she was tall, and maybe just in
a
quick glance.
I guess that he thinks that he's trying to hide that that she's... I don't know. It was a really weird scene, but like he like is like, oh, you're not fooling me. You look like a man and all this stuff, which was, ooh, little icky. But he grabs her chest, saying, "Oh yeah, those don't even look real." And he grabs her. I'm just like, wow.
Yeah, and she bolts.
Yeah, so she leaves. She's so offended. She leaves. So he's just like, Mr. Roper is like mortified, thank God, mortified. Otherwise, that scene would not have been redeeming in any way. At least he knows that he
messed up.
He messed up and he crossed a line. So Mr. Roper freaks out and goes away. Goes back downstairs. Tells Helen like, no, that was a woman. That was a woman up there that I saw. And Helen's like, no, there was a man. He was in a robe. Like, this is who. Like, I saw him. So then they go back upstairs after offering. So that was. Then they offered Jack to move in after the interviewee left. So then after they offer it to Jack, Mr. Roper and Helen come upstairs, and that's when they see Jack. And Mr. Roper is like, he cannot live here. We can't have unmarried co-ed people living in this apartment, which I'm just like, are you serious? Like,
right. We were both like, wow.
Like that's a rule. A landlord can dictate that. And so like he's saying you can't do that. So Jack and Chrissy go into the kitchen so Jack can get dressed. And so they're in there, and then they come back out. Mr. Roper's all of a sudden like, it's fine, Jack, you can stay here. And then Helen is being like really nice to him, being like, welcome to the apartment. And then the Ropers leave, and then Jack's like, how did you convince him to do that? And Janet was like, oh, I just had to convince him that you were not interested in us in any way. I had to tell him that you're gay.
Yes.
And then the episode ends.
Yep.
Like there it is.
Like there it is.
Setup. Like I have to say, we'll get into some of that. It does like it doesn't do any more. It doesn't do any less. Like it introduces the characters. It tells you exactly who they are. This is the setup. This is where we live, and this is the plot. And as soon as the reveal is, then the episode's over. Like that's the plot to Three's Company. Like,
and I really want to think. I mean, obviously, you have their apartment, the Roper's apartment.
Yeah.
Later on, we're introduced to the Regal Beagle, the famous bar,
right,
where Larry works.
Yes,
and then maybe a restaurant or two. Maybe a couple of times they go places. But honestly, I cannot really remember an episode, and obviously it's been a minute,
right,
that they are really ever outside of this apartment. I mean, the majority of the episodes take place in this apartment. So it's kind of funny in that way that, I mean, it really is the setup of where this is going to take place. Yeah.
I really like that. All right, so do we think this show holds up?
I think we're both torn. I mean, I thought it was funny and it was a good setup.
Oh, yeah.
It was like,
it was definitely funny.
Just kind of the serendipity of them becoming roommates, having a bad experience of an interviewee.
The whole show is very like farcical. It's very kind of wacky, absurd, kind of silly kind of humor.
We've done Dynasty was one of the ones we've already done, and we talk about homosexuality in that show, and this one was even before that.
Right.
So
this would have been
again, and I'm younger at this point.
Yeah.
So I sit there and think about, like, again, maybe this is why I'm an ally or something, but I just don't think, like, the being gay sort of seems like it was a positive thing, but it was really negative because it was the only reason he allowed Jack to live with the girls. Right. I was like, what?
Right. So, and it's like what I was saying. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, go.
Oh, no, I was just saying, like, it was like what I was telling you earlier before we were recording. It was like this weird contradictory, like, part of it is very progressive and positive, and another part of it is very like dated and like kind of, I don't want to say misogynistic. I was going to say icky, but misogynistic is a much smarter word.
Like, and there's another thing that I think we were talking. I mean, when you were just talking about the landlord was dictating this.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no indication that he actually owns these buildings or something, or that it's like a place that he can dictate.
Landlord feels like he's more like, I'm just gonna reference Melrose Place,
your favorite,
my new favorite show. He's like the site manager. He's like the fix it guy. He's not like, to me, he's not like the landlord. I mean, like,
he doesn't own the building,
right? He's like the manager.
Yes,
he's like the property manager. There it is. I knew I was gonna get there.
So yeah, I think it holds up in the funniness the slapstick,
the physical
sort of,
comedy,
the physical comedy,
100%.
To me, I just am like, I couldn't believe that Mr. Roper was dictating to two women that they could not choose to live with a man, gay, straight, or not.
Right.
And
I mean, even in 1977, that feels like even
Weird.
like in California, in
Yeah.
Santa Monica, like in LA, like that just felt very like. And we found out. I mean, because I didn't know until I looked it up that Three's Company is based on a UK show. But like, I'm just wondering if there was just maybe like a culture difference between UK and the US with like like that was like kind of the only part that I was just kind of like, that's just so weird that
yeah.
that's the like hook to the show. I'm sure that there are plenty of future episodes that are much more on the homophobic side, that are
Yes,
much more
well,
on the like kind of at the kind of, but the jokes are always at the I'm assuming that the jokes are always kind of at the expense of Mr. Roper.
No, they're at the expense of Jack. He shows his.
Okay.
Yes, he does. He does like his little like girly.
I was hoping you weren't going to say
and
that. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. So initially in the pilot, you're kind of like, okay.
Right.
But then later on, he considers Jack very feminine and girly
Gotcha.
and kind of all of those.
Because and that's kind of why I was leaning into earlier about him being a chef and him being able to cook. Like, in Mr. Roper's eyes, that's a
girl thing.
That's a woman's job.
Yeah, that's a woman's work. So I'm sure he thought the same thing. Like, oh,
so weird.
you are gay because you're a cook. So I don't think it holds up for that, but it was funny. The actors were really great.
It was really funny. The chemistry between John Ritter and what's Janet's real name?
Oh, of course, now
Suzanne Summers,
Joyce DeWitt.
The chemistry between those three were great. The chemistry between Mr. and Mrs. Roper,
Norman Fell,
and Audra Lindley.
I don't
know how I just remember that. So, would I continue watching this? Probably not.
Not after a few episodes.
Yeah,
I don't think you would after you see a lot of Mr. Roper's treatment of Jack.
It is that, but it's also just, I don't know, like it's very, that humor, that type of humor is so specific to that era that
Definitely.
like there is only so much of it I can take in one sitting. Like I can watch The Jerk, I can watch Blazing Saddles and understand that the joke is more based on that the joke is kind of more on the racist or on the bigot, where it's like, oh, people that believe this are stupid, which is basically like the Mel Brooks tactic of dealing with that kind of thing. But with this, it was just very just kind of like you're doing it at the expense of gay people,
Yes.
of the community at large, and it's
I do, as I think about it, because we haven't watched any more.
No, but I can
it does.
only imagine.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think that unfortunately, it's just a little too dated in that sense.
Yeah.
Otherwise, really funny. If that part doesn't bother you, then I recommend watching it because it was actually really funny.
Yeah,
and it's unfortunate that like it has a dated hook to it that just
doesn't translate.
Doesn't do
today.
it for me. Yeah, it just doesn't do it for me.
All right. Well, I think that wraps up this episode of We Judge a Show by Its Pilot. Thanks for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please go ahead and follow us on whichever platform you're listening to this podcast on. That way you will be notified every time we publish a new episode.
You can also follow us on Instagram at We Judge Pilot Pod. You can leave us a comment, suggest a show for us to watch, or you can leave an emoji in the comments. Anna, what you got?
I got a lot for this one.
Uh-oh.
I mean, it's the number 3, the little snow for Chrissy Snow, a bouquet of flowers for Janet, the chef emoji, the bathtub,
of course,
the vomit,
of course,
the rope
for ropers,
Good one. Rum punch for the punch she made, the frying pan,
okay,
and the bicycle.
All right.
Yeah, I had a lot for this one that I thought would work.
A lot of props.
A lot of props.
All right, we're going to head out, but we'll talk to you soon.
We'll be waiting for you.
Aw.